Traditionally, when I think of taking a walk, I think of a form of punishment women use as an excuse to spend time with you. But when you take a bass line for a walk, it's actually pretty awesome. So today we're going to talk about just an intro to maybe make walking bass lines and how you don't even have to use them in just a jazz setting, but you can really kind of get creative with it to create this cool kind of steady pulsing thing. So basically a walking bass line is a way to connect chords within a chord progression that's very steady, quarter notes, right? So if we have like a bar of 4, the example we're first going to use is going to be a bar of C to connect to a bar of G, to a bar of E minor, to a bar of D. Okay, so that's going to be our example and how we're going to choose to walk around these. So if you just have a bar, you can just straight up play the root note, right? The one beat is always going to establish the root note in the way that we're doing it. You can get more creative with any of these later, but it's really kind of important to think of the 4 beats and their role within a walking bass line per bar, okay? So if we just have 1, 2, 3, 4 to G, 2, 3, 4 to E minor, to D, 2, 3, 4. That's just every beat in that bar is going to be the root note, okay? Now we just really want the 1, the downbeat, to be the root note to establish the chord, and then we can kind of be a little more creative with making our walking bass line from it, all right? So the first example we're going to use those 3 notes of 4. The first 3 are just going to be a straight up arpeggio. So this isn't going to be super creative. We're just going to use an arpeggio into the next chord, okay? So remember, we have to take the C major to a G major. Now how we get there, we're just going to take a C major arpeggio. That's a root. Its major third, I'm starting on 3A. The major third of C is on a bass is always going to be down a string, back a fret to its major third. So this is an E, the second fret on the D string. So the first beat, the second beat, and then the 5th of a C, which is a G, the 5th note on the D string, which that G note is actually the next chord we're going to. So we're going to create some movement to get back to that chord, right? Straight up C major arpeggio into a G, okay? Now the cool thing about a walking bass line is it has like a sense of momentum, of forward movement. And one of the ways to do that is whenever you get to the new root note of the next chord, you can just take the note right before that chord. Okay, so if we're going to a G, the note right before that, the second fret on the E string, is F sharp. That's going to lead us right into there to kind of create that movement, right? So again, C major arpeggio right before the G. Okay? Now to kind of make it a little jazzier, we can kind of hit that root note twice, just swing a little bit like. Okay, so now it brings us into the second bar, and we can do the exact same thing with the G. So really the cool thing about bass is these shapes are movable. You just take the G, its major third, and its 5th. 3, E2, A, 5A. And remember, the next chord we said we were going to is going to be an E minor. So if we think of the root note as the 7th fret on the A string, it's really easy to get there. We just chromatically, which means 1 note at a time, walk it right into the next note, right? Because the first beat, the second beat, the third beat, again, we got to get from here to here. Just connect the dots. Okay, so C major arpeggio into G major arpeggio, walk to E. Okay, now the thing about an E minor, this is the first different class chord. It's not a major chord anymore. So we just have to find its minor third, which you can always think of a minor third on the bass, down a string, back 2 frets. Same thing as a major third, but flattened, right? So here's the first beat. Now we can take the 5th again, which is really, if we kind of continue going down the bass in order, we would have the 9th fret of the D string, but we kind of want to keep a lot of that low end, so maybe we'll take the 5th below. So we have E, its minor third, and then maybe the 7th fret on the E string, which is again just an octave lower of where its 5th would be. And then that last note we're going to do is going to go to a D. So instead of before, how remember in the 4th beat of every bar, we go to the note previous the next chord. Let's try going to the note right in front, the note higher than the D, and then kind of going back down into that D, right? So if we have E, its minor third, okay? You have an option. You can go from above it and come down, or come below it and come up. So here's above it, or lower. Right? They both kind of work. And even though a lot of times that note isn't going to be in the key that you're in, it still kind of creates this cool movement of getting somewhere, right? So again, this is just a very basic way of just arpeggiating all of these. The C major arpeggio into a G major arpeggio, walk it to E, its minor third, fifth, down to D, its arpeggio, back to C. Okay, so that's a very basic way. Now, you don't always have to just do a straight up arpeggio. You can get as creative as you want. The first and third beats are going to be the most solid beats that you're probably going to want to put a chord tone on. What a chord tone is just any of these notes in the arpeggio that is in the chord that the band is playing, right? So that the second and fourth beat is where you can get a little bit more creative. Now again, this isn't just a jazz thing, and I'm primarily a guitar player, so believe it or not. And the first time I heard a really cool walking bass line, because I'm a total jazz poser, was the Jimi Hendrix song, Hey Joe. I remember there's this cool guitar run that's like... right? And this is going to be the exact same thing, but maybe more in like a rock bluesy type setting. So the chords in Hey Joe are C to G to D to A to E minor, right? So it's really, this is an example of almost like note for note the exact thing we talked about with one kind of switch up, right? So we established ourselves on the C, just like we did before, but instead of going to the major third, like here, a C to an E, we're gonna go a major third below, right? C to E, 1, 2, 3. Okay, now this is an example of where you take a root note, its major third below, and then chromatically walk it to the next chord. If you're going to a chord a fifth away, C to G is a fifth, C, D, E, F, G, a fifth away, below, whatever, you can always chromatically walk in a 4 count from the major third. C, E, F, F sharp, G. And we're just gonna repeat this in a different way where we go a string higher now, okay? So now we have G, major third, chromatic, walk to D. Same thing as before, D, then back, down to the next fifth up, chromatic, walk to E. Okay, so this is an example of a chord progression that goes from a root note to its fifth, a root note to its fifth, a root note to its fifth. That's why that circle of fifths thing can be kind of important as far as like structurally seeing how a lot of these things work. And then just chromatically walking a root note, its major third, walk note for note into the next chord. C, major third, chromatic to G, major third, chromatic to D, major third below, chromatic to A, major third, walk to E. Okay? So that's just kind of an example of more of like a rock context. It's really the same thing. You know, it kind of sounds jazzy. I just think walking bass lines are really cool and something that you don't really need a lot of music theory fretboard knowledge to get to. It's just thinking about connecting those chords. You have 4 beats to do the damage that you need to do to get to that next chord, pop them together, and then you got yourself a pretty cool walking bass line. So if you have any questions or comments, hit me up in the comment section, Instagram, Twitter, or the website, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.